Good morning. Welcome to the Trent England Show. Glad to have you here with us this Tuesday morning, the third week of the Oklahoma legislative session, and we have some votes to talk about. We talked about education yesterday. I put up yesterday. I had such a good time, even though it's frustrating. I had such a good time talking about school choice yesterday that I wrote up some of the things that I said, and it's up at ocpathink.org, so you can go over there and find it. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show, because we have a committee vote to tell you about in just a couple of minutes here on the Trent England Show. This is important. It affects kids. We're going to talk about who some of those kids are. But let's start off. I do this to remind ourselves, one of the problems that we have is we don't know history. We don't know a lot of what goes on around the rest of the world. Our media, our schools do not do a good job educating us about those things, and they put it all in context. And I mean, I never took freedom as seriously as I did when I met someone who had grown up behind the Iron Curtain. And talked to that person and learned about their experiences, and it opened my eyes to how valuable freedom is in this country, and to just what a disgrace it is when people like Oklahoma State legislators don't protect our freedom, don't limit our government, don't expand options for parents. I'm getting ahead of myself. Russia and rubber duckies. A Russian activist has been dragged off to jail for probably about 25 days, at least 3 weeks in jail. What was his crime? What was the crime of Artyom Goncharenko, an anti-Putin Russian activist? He, well, you see it there on the screen. He displayed a rubber ducky in his window, literally he made a big rubber ducky. He displayed it in his window. Looks like it's probably paper mache there or something. And the sign in the window there reads, it doesn't say how much is that ducky in the window. It says, "The police are waiting for us." Why is the duck so controversial? You know, you may have seen, I think I talked about it on the show once, that Winnie the Pooh is banned from Chinese social media, because Winnie the Pooh had been used in some political cartoons by some dissidents in China. And so now the great Chinese firewall, the great internet censorship bureaucracy in China blocks out images of Winnie the Pooh. Well, in Russia, it's rubber duckies, because they become a symbol of the opposition movement in Russia, because Medvedev, Putin's closest crony, has been found to have been collecting up luxury homes. And one of those luxury homes has, I guess, a particularly nice duck house, so he can raise ducks, or have some servant raise ducks for him on the grounds of one of these houses. And so rubber duckies have become a sign of protest, a symbol of opposition to the opulence of the oligarchs and Putin and Medvedev and the rest of them in Russia. And so now this guy is going to jail. He's in jail right now. Okay, so that's Russia. What about New York? I saw this story yesterday. I was amazed, but it makes sense. It actually makes sense when you think about it here. This from Liberty Counsel, which is a litigation-oriented organization that defends religious liberty and defends freedom of speech, and they are defending some pro-life people in New York who are being persecuted by the New York Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, the New York Attorney General. Well, just how radical of a leftist is Attorney General Schneiderman in New York? He has teamed up with a woman named Mary Lou Greenberg, who is the spokesman for the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. And so you have New York Attorney General Schneiderman saying, we're going to go out, and what they're going after people who literally they stand on the sidewalk outside of abortion clinics and they pray or they hold signs, right? This is a great Rorschach test, right? Anybody who's against that is against freedom of speech. I mean, this is not complicated. This is basic core freedom of speech. They have a message, a politically oriented message, a religiously motivated message. They're on public property, right? I mean, this is core freedom of speech. And Schneiderman has actually contracted with Mary Lou Greenberg, this person who works with the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. He's contracted with her to put together the case against these pro-life activists. Now, why is this crazy? The Revolutionary Communist Party USA is actually one of the few organizations in the United States that is probably clearly beyond the boundaries of protected speech. I'm not saying that they should necessarily be prosecuted. But you know, what's not legal to do with your freedom of speech is to advocate actual violence, and that's exactly what this group does. So you have people standing on a sidewalk advocating for a position of not doing violence to unborn children, and you have the Attorney General of the state of New York contracting with someone, and we can pull up the website here for the Revolutionary Communist Party. It says they are organizing now to overthrow this system at the soonest possible time, preparing to lead an actual revolution. And it goes on and on. I'm not going to belabor the point. It goes on to talk about they want an actual, violent, armed revolution. They want a suspension of due process until they liquidate their opposition. They admit this. It's in writing. It's on the internet. And these are the kind of, and as I said, on the one hand, it's sort of surprising, and on the other hand, it's not surprising at all. It makes perfect sense. Because for a politician like Schneiderman in New York, if you want to shut down freedom of speech, who better to partner with than people who don't believe in due process, don't believe, if you want to go after pro-life activists, who better than people who believe that they should kill in the name of their ideology? It's outrageous, but it's not surprising. And so it's only surprising, I guess, perhaps, that it's happening here within the boundaries of the United States of America. Okay, so what we talked yesterday, bringing it all the way back home to Oklahoma, we talked about these votes that were coming up this week in committee on education, on various education measures. We talked about the good and the bad, and the fact that, I mean, there are measures that would expand some local control where it's appropriate. And remember, local control is a principle of how you do government. It's not a principle of why you do government. So local control is sometimes appropriate, sometimes not appropriate, only if that principle of how you do government serves the reasons why you do government, right? This is a really important distinction. Some conservatives get this tragically wrong, right? We don't want everything just done by local control. We want local control where it actually advances good government. It advances government that protects people's individual rights. It helps to keep government limited. Then we should have local control. If it does the opposite, if it's local control so that people's property rights can be violated or their religious liberty can be violated, then we don't want local control, because it's not in the order, in the hierarchy of things that we value. Local control is not at the top, right? It's not the reason why we do government. It's just a way to do government better in many cases. Okay, so local control, some measures like that are being considered this week in the legislature. Also, these disingenuous efforts to try to drag down charter schools, drag down private schools, hurt all these programs. One of the bills we didn't talk about yesterday that I'm going to tell you about today is very important, although it suffered a setback yesterday. Although it could still move forward. It is not impossible that this could still move forward. This has to do with, I mentioned this yesterday, but not the legislation specifically, the scholarship tax credits. Now, how does this work? We already have this program in Oklahoma right now. I mentioned Opportunity Scholarship Fund, osfkids.org, yesterday on the program. How does this work? This is the state saying, look, if you donate money to education for kids within some parameters that I'll explain in just a minute, if you actually take, and of your own free will, you give some money to a school, then we will give you a tax credit for that, which makes perfect sense because the state spends a lot of money on education. So if the state can say, hey, look, you spend some money on education, private person, private business, you spend some money on education, and we'll give you a tax credit. You don't get everything back. You can get almost everything back. It's a pretty good tax credit, but you don't get everything back. The state is still spending money on education, and basically what it's doing is it's increasing the total amount of money in the state of Oklahoma that's being spent on education. So if anybody cares about education, I mean, this is an unmitigated good thing, right? Now, the only way you could see it as a bad thing, I will put this out there, because if I don't, in just a minute you'll be saying, well, wait a second, why would anybody oppose this program? That doesn't make sense. Because it's literally increasing the amount of dollars in the state of Oklahoma that are spent on education. It's designed to do that, and it actually does that. There's actually an economic paper from the university, from Oklahoma City University that shows that. That shows that it increases the total amount of money spent on education, and it also increases the amount of money spent within the government system, right? You've got government, you got private, right? You have two sides of the education equation in Oklahoma. This increases both sides of that equation. But the one reason why a politician or anybody else would oppose it is if they want more people to be in the government side, right? Because it says, look, if you put money into the private side, you're already forced to put money into the public side, right? If you put money into the private side, we'll actually give you a credit, right? And even though it does, because you are increasing per pupil spending on the public side doesn't get any worse off, but it does potentially get smaller because these tax credits are focused at middle income and lower income families, which means that people who can't, the whole idea is people who right now need another educational option for their kids and don't have one, the idea is these scholarship funds suddenly make that available, suddenly mean that a kid who couldn't attend a private program in the past can attend a private program now, right? And of course, they're only going to do that. The only reason they would do that is if their parent makes a judgment that that's a better choice, right? Nobody's forced. Pure freedom, pure choice, right? It's a decision made by parents. So the only reason to oppose that is if you want to force people to stay in the politician-run system. There is literally no other reason to oppose a program like this, right? The public system gets better off, the private system gets better off, more people get to make choices that they believe are better for their kids, right? Everybody wins unless you have an ideology that says that politicians should control kids. And there is an ideology like that. I know sometimes people say, well, nobody believes that. There is an ideology that says that. It is obviously in play in this vote on House Bill 3537. Now, what would House Bill 3537 do? It would increase the cap. There's a cap on how much can be given out from these tax credits, and that cap has actually been hit. Oklahomans are really generous people. There's no secret to that, right? Oklahomans are very generous. Oklahomans already give a lot to educational programs. This program encouraged people to give even more to educational programs, and frankly, to direct more of that support explicitly to middle income and low income scholarship funds, right? So it's actually shifting some of that money to specifically to kids who couldn't afford it otherwise, right? So so this would increase that cap. This would keep that program going and growing. And again, I'll just simply create an incentive to put even more money into education in Oklahoma, to invest even more money in education in Oklahoma. The only reason to not raise the cap is to prevent people from attending these private schools, right? Again, and it doesn't have any effect on the wealthy, right? Has no effect on the wealthy. It has an effect on middle income and poor Oklahomans. And look, the bottom line here is the caricature of private schools, and we have to be very careful as conservatives not to fall into this trap. The caricature of private schools, right, is that private schools are either religious fundamentalist schools or they're schools for the wealthy elites, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I explained this in the blog post that I put up after yesterday's show, right? I mean, I'll just put it to you in short. You can go read it at ocpathink.org if you want to. But look, if you set up a program, you said, we're going to raise your taxes, we're going to give you free food. I said a little bit of this yesterday, but I didn't follow it all the way through. What would happen? What would happen to all the grocery stores out there? Because you tell people, look, we're not shutting down grocery stores. We're not telling you can't go buy private food. We're just raising your taxes by a whole bunch and giving you free food. It's not really free, but you had to prepay for it, right? What would happen? Grocery stores that cater to the middle class and the poor would mostly go broke. Because if you're middle class, if you're poor, you're not going to pay for groceries twice. Even if you don't like what the politicians are sending your way, you're still probably not going to pay for food twice, unless you have a really specific need, right? If you have some religious food prescriptions, right, some religious food needs, then you might suffer, really you're going to take the hit and go and still go to the to the kosher deli or the halal deli or whatever it is. You're still going to go and meet those needs, and you're going to scrimp and save to do it. Right? But the grocery stores that do best, the grocery stores that thrive in a world like that, would be the ones that cater to wealthy elites because they have enough money to pay for groceries twice. That is the self-fulfilling prophecy about private schools in the system we have today. Right? The fact that private schools tend to cater to either people with sort of niche desires about their education or to wealthy elites is only because the way that public schools are designed. It says nothing about private schools and everything about a political monopoly on education. Right? Has nothing to do with what I've talked to private school principals before who say, I would love to have a more diverse student body, but it's really tough, right? Because it's expensive to run a private school, although private schools usually spend less than public schools do per student. But it costs some money to run the system, and everybody's forced to pay for the other system. So you've got to pay twice if you want to attend a different program, right? Okay, so that is House Bill 3537. It failed in committee yesterday by 1 vote. I want to pull up the vote. I want you to be able to see who these people are. We can pull that up, just leave that on the screen for a few minutes while I'm talking about this. And what I want to say is thank you to the legislators who voted yes. Because you and I may not understand this dynamic fully. Let's just leave that up on the screen for a minute while I'm talking about this. This vote on House Bill 3537, it failed by 1 vote. It does not mean that the bill is necessarily dead. It could come back. It could move forward. But look, the education status quo lobby in Oklahoma is powerful. It is backed up by money from architecture firms that make gobs of money off of schools. It's backed up by superintendents and other school district middle management, right, who are some of the best paid people in many of their communities, right? It is backed up by adults who make a lot of money off of the status quo school system, and they invest that money in protecting the status quo school system. They know that private schools have to because private schools operate in a competitive environment, they have to be more focused on students and less focused on adult needs, right? I mean, that's the reality about private schooling. The more school choice you have, the more the system will focus on student needs and the less it will focus on adult needs. That's the nature of a competitive environment, right? The more the system focuses on the customers are the kids, right? And the less it focuses on the needs of adults, the needs of the people in the system. Right? And so the people who voted yes yesterday, they are going to be attacked by the Oklahoma State School Board Association. They're going to be attacked by the superintendents in their districts, by and large. They're going to be attacked by adults who benefit from the status quo. And this is an election year, right? I mean, they're going to take the slings and arrows of adults who don't care enough about kids to want to open more doors for kids to get the best education possible. We can take that down now. People have had a chance to see it. I'll share it out in the show links after the program this morning. But look, especially if one of those is your state legislator, please reach out and thank these people. Please reach out and tell them you support them. You know that that they get a lot of blowback for standing up for kids. And who are some of these kids, by the way? I want to end with this. Who are some of the kids who benefit from this program right now today? This is not hypothetical, right? Who did, for the legislators who voted no, who did they vote against? Let's pull up the page for Mission Academy High School. Mission Academy High School is a private high school, has to be a private high school. I'll explain why in just a minute. For kids who have suffered from addiction. For kids who have suffered from alcohol addiction or drug addiction, Mission Academy High School is part of a program that helps kids recover from addiction, right? This is obviously, I mean, this is one of the jewels of Oklahoma, is that we have a program like this that provides these services to kids, and even have a high school where kids who, most of these are going to be kids who have dropped out of school or fallen behind in school, and they can come back into this program, and they can eventually get their high school diploma. Obviously, this is something that is very important. This is something, I mean, who disagrees with this? This is a program that benefits from tax credit scholarships, right? These are the kids who would benefit from raising the cap. A vote no on this bill it's not a vote for anything other than opposing these kids, right? I mean, that's what it does. That's the real world impact of what it does. What about Positive Tomorrows? Let's pull up the website for Positive Tomorrows. This is a program more Oklahomans have heard about than Mission Academy because it gets written up in the newspaper oftentimes. It's another one of just the gems of our community here in Oklahoma. Positive Tomorrows is a private school only for homeless kids, specifically for kids from homeless families. It provides them an education along with a lot of the support and a lot of the stability that they need. These are the kids who benefit from this program, right? It's not kids at the wealthy schools. They don't need the program, and the program is designed to direct the money to middle income and lower income families. So the money does not go to wealthy kids who are already in private schools. We know about this program already. And the kids at Positive Tomorrows are some of the beneficiaries. The kids at Mission Academy are some of the beneficiaries. Some of the kids who took a blow yesterday in the Oklahoma legislature when House Bill 3537 was voted down. Why do these have to be private programs? I want to end with this because this point is so important. Why do these have to be private programs? And it's because the public school system has to try to be everything to everybody. And the public school system, by the way, does a great job for a lot of people, right? But you know, you always have, whether it's academic interest or academic potential, whether it's family stability or family support, whether it is family income or anything else, or the educational attainment of somebody's parents, all these things that go into a student's educational experience, right? Every one of these is basically a bell curve. I know that term is unpopular because of, I don't know, because of popular science and people who don't understand it, but you understand it, and I understand it, right? You always have, you tend to have most people, they're kind of around the middle, right? Excuse me, most people, tend to sort of cluster in the middle, and then you've got people who tend to be out at one extreme. Maybe people who come from families that are really stable, and the parents all have advanced degrees and whatever, and then you have people where neither of their parents graduated from high school, and there's a lot of instability, and what have you, and sometimes you're going to have people who are out at the positive end of one and out at the negative end of another, and public schools have to try to cater to everybody, which means that oftentimes they work pretty well for people in the middle, right? But if you want to run a school for kids who are recovering from addiction, if you want to run a school for kids whose families are homeless, right? You can't do that as a public school because you don't get to say, we'll accept this kid, we won't accept that kid. Right? I mean, if you show up at Positive Tomorrows and you say, I want to enroll my kid there, they're going to say, are you homeless? And if you say no, they're not going to accept you, right? That's something that they can do because they're a private school. Same thing with Mission Academy. Same thing with private schools that cater to specifically serve kids with learning disabilities, right? I mean, those schools are able to create a particular kind of community to minister to a particular kind of kid because they're private programs. And the bigotry against those kind of programs ought to stop. The bigotry against educational programs that specialize, that focus. We have another great program, it's really exciting. It's opening in Oklahoma this fall called Cristo Rey, where they're going to go to school 4 days a week. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? They're going to go to school 4 days a week, and the 5th day of the Cristo Rey program, and this is a program that has been deployed in other states, and now it's coming to Oklahoma City. On the 5th day, they work. They actually go, and the program is designed to find kids, to serve kids from lower income backgrounds, and to help them not only get through high school successfully, but also develop those soft skills, those work skills, that experience in a professional workplace so that they can be successful, whether they go directly into the workplace or into college, whatever they do, they'll have a lot of those skills that they otherwise wouldn't get just because of their family backgrounds. And again, if you show up there and say, Dad's a lawyer, and you know, I know I'm going to college. They're going to say, "Yeah, this program is not for you," right? I mean, the bigotry against private school programs that specialize, that create unique communities, that deliver education in a customized way. Look, it's not for everybody. None of those programs claims to be for everybody. They claim just the opposite. And for the kids, whether they're homeless kids or kids recovering from addiction or kids who come from a background where they've never walked into an office, a business office before, right? The idea that we should put our foot on the necks of those kids, that state legislators would put their feet on those kids and hold them down, is an outrage and a disgrace to the great state of Oklahoma. Thanks for watching the Trent England Show today. We'll keep you updated on all of that. Again, this could move forward. Thank your state legislators for standing up for school choice if they've done that. And if they haven't, don't attack them, don't harass them. Encourage them to do better. They can do better. I'm Trent England. Thanks for watching.